Hello everyone, I'm Mike Toledo, your host on Dent Time PDR, a podcast about PDR training, tutorials, interviews, and much more. So get something to eat, drink, and start pushing. It's time to listen. Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Mike Toledo. Thanks for joining me on podcast number 16. I cannot believe it's already 16. It doesn't seem that many compared to the ones I've done with PDR Tool Time. And by the way, if you haven't checked that out, maybe you are listening to this. I would assume that you've already are aware that there are other podcasts, and I will mention them. PDR Tool Time, check them out. You can go to pdrtooltime.com, or you can go to check out them on iTunes. I've produced a lot of those episodes, and I was in on those, and I still go in on that. So I was a co-creator with that, with those three other guys, Daniel Grom, John Hiley, and Vince D'Alessandro. They have a new host now, John Redstorm from Mobile Tech RX. He's an awesome guy on there, and occasionally I go on there, and John is got his own podcast going, and I think it's called the Tactical PDR podcast. So look John Hiley up if you are interested in hearing some of his takes on PDR. And you can also check out PDR College. So check them out. Look them up on iTunes. Same thing with John. And anyways, I thought I'd give a shout out to those podcasts. And they're very, very educational. I think there's maybe one or two more that are out right now. So I have been hearing on the grapevine that there are going to be some more new podcasts coming out. So I'll look forward to hearing from those. And as soon as they do, I will go ahead and mention that. All right, so we're going to talk about some tech tips with glue pulling. We're going to talk about the new products that have came out with glue pulling. I am going to mention, or just right off the bat, some of the do's and don'ts that you got to watch out for as far as glue pulling. Now, what I've been told, and John Redstorm especially, and another tech confirmed, my tech who works with me, Big John Miller, the biggest car right now, or the biggest manufacturer that is pulling paint a lot right now is Ford Explorers in particular. So watch out for those Ford Explorers. They are pulling paint. That's what's going on in the updated world of glue pulling. Now Subaru, if you're been around for a block for a little bit and you've been glue pulling for a while, you are aware that Subaru in the past had some of the worst paint, or beyond the paint was the primer on it. So when you go to pull the dent out, the paint would just come right off. It might not have came off in the first try, but for me personally, it was definitely within 5 pulls, it was coming off. That has changed based on my experience, at least from this last week. I've been working on a hail car, and we glue pulled probably about 30% of this vehicle, and not one time did we pull paint. So hats off to Subaru. They are, based on my experience, and I've even called around and asked on different forums, how was the paint on the Subarus? And a majority of everybody had said that they had not pulled paint on the newer Subarus. Still, in my opinion, and I think most agree, that you will still have to let the customer know by having a waiver, at least written on the invoice, or have it on your Mobile Tech RX, that there could be possible paint pulling. You never know when it's going to happen. It seems like it always happens when you think it's not going to happen, or you're not paying attention. You just, I'll just glue pull it, and you don't say anything, and then it happens. Trust me, it does. There's a few clubs that you don't want to be in as a PDR tech. The glass break club and the pull paint club. And it seems like, no matter what, you're going to be joining those two clubs, no matter what. It's just a given sometime. I've broken a lot of windows, and some of them, well, a lot of them were my fault for not being so aware back in my day. But I've actually broke a window just by putting a wedge between the window and the door skin, and it was a Maybach, and that cost about $3,000. So be aware of what you're doing. A lot of it has to do with you being self-conscious about how you are approaching the repair, and also the customer awareness, and you being aware that it could possibly pull paint. So be careful, okay? Those are the clubs you don't want to join. So we're going to get into the basics of glue pulling, and then we'll speed it up for the general, little bit more advanced PDR. So I hope this podcast helps you out. And if you are on YouTube and you're disappointed that this is not a video, and you give me a thumbs down, then I understand, but this is for real serious techs or people who are really considering getting into PDR, and people who want to listen and see if they're on the same page and things like that. I'm sorry this isn't a video. If you're looking for top-notch videos, really well-produced videos, I do that, but I don't always put them on YouTube. The best ones I save for denttrainer.com. If you are interested in becoming a member there, I encourage you to check it out, denttrainer.com. Awesome camera angles, step-by-step explanations, some just really, really in-depth details. Sometimes filming those videos take me days to do and then edit it. And then I have to shoot it the way I would like you to shoot it. So I will be actually releasing some Dent Trainer videos out on YouTube just to show the quality of how I shoot compared to what the crap I've been seeing on YouTube. So pardon me if I sound like I'm a hater. I am not. But I feel if you're going to give a tutorial, do it right. Don't block the camera half the time. Put it in a great position. And that advice follows with you guys too as well. If you're going to show a potential customer what you're doing, take the time and do it right. Look like a professional, and you'll be treated like a professional. So that's just a little advice there. Okay, so let's get on with it. So now we are talking about the basic glue pulling. Now, a lot of it has to do with your weather conditions, okay? So your climate. If you're in Texas and the humidity, then there are different glue that you should be considered using, okay? So we are talking about, red generally is for hot and humid. Blue is for cold. I'm not going to get into all the super details. Matter of fact, I actually did all these little guidelines, a thing called Glue Pull Practicals. There is a video section in denttrainer.com called Glue Pull Practicals, a lot of glue pull videos. But if you're looking for a specific kind of like a little directions or a guide, I do have that too as well, and that's why I'm going off right now. I've created this guide a long time ago, years ago, and it keeps changing. And matter of fact, now it keeps changing so rapidly. It's almost like I shouldn't even put it out because it's different all the way down to the glue. So we will get into, we're going to talk about intro to glue pulling, the kits and essentials, repair process. I know there's a lot to take in. But I'm gonna skim over everything. And again, if you want really the details and you want to see exactly how I do it and how John does it, or someone else, we've got a tech industry leader called Gene Fetty. He's in there, and he does a tutorial called Big Pull Small Tabs. I think that's what it was. So. But he talks about using smaller tabs, which I will mention as well in here. So let's talk about the essentials of what you're going to need. You're going to need some glue tabs and possibly super tabs. Super tabs are these much larger tabs than you are accustomed to seeing. I actually use those. If you're curious what they look like, I use those on a YouTube video called Monster Miata Dent. Check that out. It is a massive dent, and I would not have been able to pull the quarter panel out without using those super tabs. Would have I done it differently compared to today, even though it was like maybe 5 years ago or so? 100% different. I would have done it different. So we'll talk. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So, but I don't want to talk about so much material that it'll be a 2-3 hour podcast. I just don't have the time to do that, and I'm sure you don't want to listen to a 3 hour podcast at once. So it's not gonna really be good. Some of you hail techs are working right now. Yeah, that might work for you. But anyways, all right. So we're gonna talk about cold glue, which is something I wouldn't say new, but it's a lot newer than the traditional glue pulling. Okay, glue guns, slide hammers, knockdowns, mini lifters, glue sticks, hand pullers, leverage bars, hammer, release agents. You're gonna need microfiber towel, the set up the board or the light, prepping the panel, using the marker to pinpoint, determining tab size, choosing what lifter, puller to use, applying the glue tab to the damage, determining setup times, getting a good pull. Okay. Inspecting for highs and lows, choosing your tap down, tapping down high areas, repeat steps. Okay. So here's the deal. So you really want to evaluate the damage and determine your success. Okay. What I mean by that is how deep is it and the location of it? Is it across a body line? Is it on the flat surface of the panel? And generally you're going to be glue pulling, right? You wouldn't necessarily volunteer to glue pull, especially if you're a veteran PDR tech, if you have access behind it. Now, there are reasons why you would glue pull. Maybe it's a stretch dent. Maybe you want to get a lot of the meat up first and then tool it. Maybe you don't have a big enough tip to get on the dent from behind, and you are concerned that the small sharp tip might make too many highs and chop it up. So glue tab and glue pulling are definitely the way to go if that's the case as well. One thing you really have to look for when you are glue pulling is make sure that the panel has not been painted before. Okay, that's a big given. For you new guys, it's kind of expensive, but the one way to find out is you need a paint thickness measure. So it's a reader that reads the paint thickness. Generally anywhere between, I would say, 3 to about 8 mils, about factory. Anything above that, especially if it's not consistent, you are more likely to have a repaint panel. So if you got, let's just say you got a 5 in one area on the same panel, and then the other area on the panel, it reads like a 13 or a 16. Yeah, you definitely are in trouble. So think about that. You can also look at the texture with your lights. You can see that there's inconsistency in the texture. Maybe that looks like it's got little dust spots in there, things like that. It's not always going to be, you're always going to get the answer you're looking for by asking the customer if it's been painted or not, because if they bought it used, they will almost tell you that it has not been painted. Then that question will be for you to ask, how did you buy it used? And generally they'll say yes, especially if you already know the answer that it's been repainted. So that's just something to consider. And then there it goes back to the waiver that you really need to mention. Is the damage excessively deep for the center pit to pull? So that's another thing. You got to determine how deep that is. If it's really sharp, probably, and most likely that glue pulling will not be a good candidate for that repair. So that's something you have to determine. Is the damage missing paint? Does it got a paint chip in the finish? Things like that. If it's got a paint chip, I've been known to pull it still, but that's on your discretion. So I would generally be very cautious if there's any kind of paint missing near it at all or on it. Dent on the body line, I kind of mentioned this before, but I didn't go into detail. If the damage crosses a body line, it is a much stronger dent to remove. It's generally not impossible on some damage. It's just very challenging because the outside area has so much tension. A glue pull just doesn't have the force needed to pull. Now, if you real good techs, you guys know what I mean. You're going to have to loosen up that crown or that depth around the outside the shoulders of the center pit if you want to have a good chance of doing that. Now, since we are on this subject, here's another tech tip. You could most likely, and I would advise, is use a crease tab like the square ones. There are straight square tabs that Black Plague just recently came out with. Those are excellent. They pull very, very nice. Or you could use their crease tabs, the Black Plague gangrene tabs. Did Kiko come out with their own crease tabs? I don't think Kiko did, but I know technically Kiko makes Black Plague's tabs for them. So if you guys are wondering about that, that is a very, very good company, Kiko tabs. So if you're considering getting those new flip tabs, those are awesome. So you can get Black Plague, I think, PDR. I will look that up. I'll put that under the links underneath where you guys can get some of these tabs if you're interested. Okay. Again, I just want you to make sure that you are avoiding all older vehicles or repaints. Older vehicles, I would be very cautious about that. Always have them sign a waiver. The paint over time, or even back then, is not as flexible as today's paint. So be cautious about that. Here's another tech tip. I told you I'd throw you guys some tech tips in here as we are going. Let's say you are aware that this paint has been repainted. Maybe the customer insists on you doing it. A good way to do it, and this is in Dent Trainer, you can watch the video. It's pretty cool. You can take a piece of clear tape, put it over the dent, and I'm talking on top of the repainted panel, and then you can put a tab on top of it. Now this is for your average glue pull repairs. Okay, could be the rail, could be an area on the panel that you have no backside to, and you take clear packing tape. Now I got this from John Hiley. I learned this actually on Dent Trainer when he was doing this, so I'm going to give him 100% credit on this. Put clear packing tape over the dent. Take your tab, your glue tab, and put it on top of the glue, on top of the tape, the clear tape. It won't melt it like you think. And then quickly get your slide hammer and pull it. Mini lifter doesn't seem to be as, I don't know why, but it just doesn't seem to be as effective as the slide hammer. So use a slide hammer. You will find that is a very effective technique on how to glue pull on something that has been painted before, or you're worried that you'll pull the paint. One of my techs, or past students, actually called me or texted me and says, Mike, I got a matte Mercedes-Benz. It's got a dent on it. Should I be concerned with the matte paint? I said, yes, you should use the clear packing tape. I forgot to ask him what happened though, but it does work though. I know it works. So I didn't know how deep it was, but that's a tech tip that you could use. So hopefully that would work out, and put that in your back pocket when you are in need of that technique. Okay. Now your work area should be, as always, cleaned off with 91% alcohol. That is my release agent of choice. It is an all-around, takes off marks. It takes off, the soil or anything that's on the panel that you need it to be squeaky clean. And then I would advise you to reapply some wax on it after the area that you've been working on. So, okay. What is the optimum temperature? Okay, the optimum temperature I would say for is glue pulling anywhere between 65 to about 77 degrees. That's the perfect weather climate to do it in. I know a lot of you guys are like, I've glue pulled a lot colder than that, a lot harder than that. Well, I understand that, but this is probably the prime weather conditions, 65 to 77. I wouldn't say more than 80 degrees on the panel. After it gets really warm on the panel, you will have a very slim chance of pulling it as tight or as good as you want, because it gets too tacky. And one thing, here's another tech tip to do. If you are in the area, if you're in an area and you're working in the sun, you need to get an umbrella. You can get an umbrella from Mobile Tech Shade or getagripnow.com. Both those manufacturers carry a very high quality, top quality umbrellas. That is something essential that you're going to need out in the field. especially if you're working on a white vehicle or it's very hot and humid, or maybe you're working in the rain. That's going to help you keep you out of the elements and help your repair go much smoother. You want to actually wipe that panel down regardless. If it's a hot, humid day, you definitely want to take like a cold rag, maybe take an ice bucket with you, wring out like a microfiber cloth, wipe that panel down, make sure your umbrella is set up and shaded over the area so it doesn't get hot again, and then start pulling. Wipe it down with alcohol again, as I mentioned, and then start pulling. You will get a much more effective pull that way than if you just set up and you didn't cool it down, or you didn't wipe any of the humidity off or any of the weather elements that was left on the panel. If you just 91% of it, 91% alcoholed it, it will work most likely, yes. But I think if you prep it even better than that, and don't forget to keep maintaining the prep as you are in between glue pulling. Wipe and putting alcohol on it and pulling the tab off or the glue off isn't technically prepping it. You have to spray it down and wipe it hard to get that nice, squeaky clean, ready to go panel. Here's another tech tip too. I find that sometimes these guys like to, they don't like to, they accidentally place the tab either to the left or to the right, and they're not hitting the center of the dent. If you can read your reflection well enough, you might want to take a pen. If you're new to glue pulling, you want to take a pen and just dot the center, and then draw a crosshair perfectly right in the middle of the dent, but make the crosshairs long enough so when you add the tab, you put the tab there, it will center the tab. The shaft of it, is right in the center of the dent, if that makes sense. Okay. Again, this is explained on the videos on denttrainer.com. Check it out. You're going to learn a heck of a lot. One other factor I wanted to mention, if you are going to use like a grease pen or a water-based pen, I would give it a few seconds to dry, or blow on it just to make sure it dries. If it's still liquidy, it will affect your pull. So be aware of that. Now that's training wheel technique. So if you are new to this, that is something you might want to consider doing, but it's not something you'll have to do throughout your experience with glue pulling. If you guys are considering training one of your guys, that would be a good technique to help at least get your guy looking at the right direction, knowing how to place the tab until he gets comfortable and knowing how to do that. Now, setting up your glue gun should be very hot before you apply the glue gun. Now, today's market, you can get a hot glue gun from Walmart. You can get one, on eBay or whatever. But if you're serious, you're going to get a cordless glue gun. And the two ones that I highly recommend right off the bat are StuckyTools.com and the ElimiDenTools.com. Both very, very professional cordless glue guns that you can't go wrong with. Recently, Ultra just came out with theirs. It's a $99 one. I've been using it. At first, I wasn't sure if I liked it, but I think it had a break-in period, and it seems to be working. I thought it was just leaking glue everywhere. So I haven't had that problem since I used it, or started using it more and more. But for $99, you can't beat it. Again, it is $99. I think it's made technically by Ryobi. But the great thing about it is that you can choose which battery system you want to use with it. So if you want to use a Makita, a Milwaukee, or DeWalt, I think, don't quote me on this, I'm not sure if they have all three systems, but I do believe they have the Makita for sure, and I think they're having the DeWalt. So consider getting that if you are in those battery systems. Or if you want just one of the other two options with all the bells and whistles, get the Stucky Tools glue gun or the ElimiDent Tools glue gun. Very, very good. So setting up the glue, let's get back to that about on your glue gun. I would allow at least 10 minutes fully to get hot. Now some guys are pulling, within 5-6 minutes, but you're going to notice that your tab isn't pulling as well, or you're going to notice as it gets hotter, your tab's got better pulls. Why? Because the glue is finally at its optimum temperature. Another tip that you'll probably realize that your glue is not hot enough is when you squeeze the trigger and it's very hard to squeeze, and the glue does not come out very smoothly. It doesn't come out very drippy. It's just a little bit thick. So you want to make sure that glue gets hot enough. Okay. Choosing a lifter or a slide hammer. Now here, this is a completely by choice. Some guys like slide hammers, some guys like mini lifters. I like them both, and I mainly pick them depending on the application. So in other words, if I'm on a rail, I will more likely use a slide hammer, because slide hammer is not going to dent the rail in any given chance like a mini lifter will. Mini lifter pins down the metal, so I'll get to that in a little bit. Though it pins down the metal, and it can dent the side panel. Again, there's another video on Dent Trainer. There's actually a tutorial teaser on YouTube called "Glue Pull Gone Bad." A lot of people gave me some thumbs down because they didn't watch the whole video and it was cut off in half. So, but they didn't see the outcome. If you want to see the outcome and how well it turned out, because it was a nasty dent and I messed up live on camera and then I fixed it. So check it out, denttrainer.com. Anyways, all right. So going back to choosing a mini lifter or slide hammer, here's my take. Okay. The difference between the two is a mini lifter offers an isolated method. The feet pin down the outside metal while squeezing the handles, and it's for controlled tension. This can be used for a quick squeeze to snap a more stubborn center pit. That's what I generally like to use the mini lifter for. Or with a gradual pull and twist of the top. So you're squeezing up on the trigger, and then you're actually tightening from the top too as it gets, because as you bring the tension up, right, the tension from the dial above loosens up. So you need to keep tightening it and then give a little bit more squeezes. You're kind of just you're pulling the metal up, giving a little bit of, hey, come on, and then you can snap it. That's so. And the feet, like I said, on a mini lifter, really, really isolate the metal. Now, since I've been doing this, and I've been doing this glue pull thing for a while, Kiko came out with a kind of a unifoot, and they call it a precision adapter, and they call the Robo lifter now a precision Robo lifter with that foot. I think it's awesome because it makes the snap way more aggressive, especially if you have more of a stubborn, deeper dent. So check that out. The Precision Robo Lifter. Again, I'll put that link on there on the bottom of this information. If you're listening to on YouTube, it should be on the bottom. If you are on my podcast site called denttimepdr.com, you will see those links down there below. All right, so with the mini lifter, I would say it's very important that you choose a good mini lifter, as I mentioned. So Robo lifter, another one just came out right now, which is Lift Right. A good friend of mine named Ray. He came out with a very, very good Robo lifter. It's very ergonomical. I just did a review on it, so check that out. That is something to consider, but you definitely need a good mini lifter. The feet are especially important. You need padded, good feet so you don't so you don't put unwanted dents in a panel. Here's another thing here. Oh, you can get other brands too, from like Dentcraft, Ultra. I think PDR Finesse carry some, and our good friends at Anson. So pretty much all the tools that I'm mentioning. I mean, I'm pretty sure that 90% of the tools that I'm mentioning or higher, you can get at AnsonPDR.com. That's kind of like your one-stop shop for all the tools. Especially if you're looking for glue, which I'm going to be talking pretty soon. I'm pretty anxious and excited to tell you guys about some new glue. I think a lot of you, not everybody, but a lot of you have already heard of it. And it's an awesome glue. All right, we're going to talk about the slide hammer. Okay, I like the slide hammer because you have a lot more control to a certain point. Now you might not. The only thing you're missing with a slide hammer and the mini lifter is that the mini lifter again is pinning down the metal. The slide hammer yanks straight up. There's nothing pinning down the metal except for the pole itself. Okay. It is, I would say, very effective, and it really has to do with how you snap that panel, how you snap it or don't snap the weight, the counterweight. There are newer slide hammers. One in particular that came out, who was the original one that did this, was called the Pole Dog, and it had a spring on the back. It still does. It has a spring in the end. And let's say you want to work, you're working a very light metal like a Subaru, and you don't want an aggressive pull. You want the tab to stay on, but you don't want it to prematurely pop off. Well, the tension, the spring in the slide hammer helps reduce the chance of it pulling off prematurely. In other words, you're going to get more pulls, boom, 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 and you can still pull it. And it's got a dampening, so the spring dampens the weight going against the end. Therefore, it's tugging the tab, not snapping the tab, if that makes sense to you. All right, so that is something to consider getting. That's a Pole Dog. I think you can get that on tdntools.com. Check them out. Very high-end slide hammer. Also, Ultra came out with their version of that. It's kind of an all-in-one. You can add weight to it. It's got an end for a pass-through. Automatically, you just slide it. It's got the, like I said, the spring on there. You can tighten or dampen or whatever you want, how you want to do it. It's pretty much the same like the Pole Dog, except it's got a little bit more fancy things to it. Not knocking any of them. They're both good, and I highly recommend them. So let's talk about applying the glue. So I'm going here really fast. If this is something you've already heard, then you probably want to skip it for a little bit. Just keep skimming through to see if there's anything that I haven't mentioned to you already. But I think it's kind of interesting because maybe there are some things here that you guys out there might be overlooking, and there's some tech tips in the middle of this. So now, applying the glue. Hold the glue in the center of the tab very steady. All right. Don't over apply. I see a lot of guys, including myself back in the day, that I put too much glue on. You don't need that much glue. You probably need a quarter, whatever the size of the tab is, you probably need a quarter or an eighth of what the size of the tab is. Really. Because technically what you want to do is you want to squeeze that glue and make it as flat and thin as you can without it dripping over the edge of your tab. Because it's really, the goal is to spread the glue evenly across the tab, the smooth tabs especially, the ones that don't have any texture on the tab, so you can get that vacuum pull that you want. You don't know that because I don't think a lot of people it hasn't been explained to a lot of people of why you get such a great pull. I think Keith Constantino on his website explains that pretty well on some glass. So it really makes sense. And if it makes sense, you got to understand how to do it better. And when you know how the Y factor, you just get better. Okay. So here's my thing with setting up times. Okay. I like to do the test of about between 10 to 20 seconds. It's generally what I like to do. When I get new glue, I make sure my glue's hot. I take the tab of my choice and I put it on the panel where the dent's at, and I wait 10 to 20 seconds. I generally wait about 10 seconds. And then from there, if it pulls off too fast and I know my glue's hot and I know the tab works good and all this other stuff, then it's a climate thing. Okay, so if it's humid out, if it's cold out, it's whatnot, I have to find out the formula of what works. And generally how you're going to find out is you do the 10 to 20 second rule. And if it pulls very good between that, then it's a fast pulling glue. If it pulls if it doesn't pull and seems like it's pulling off, it's pulling, but it's not snapping off, it's not giving you that aggressive pull that you want, then wait a little longer. I would set it up and wait 25 to 35 seconds and so on and so forth. Add another 10 or 15 second time onto that tab. I generally don't think it's a very good idea to wait longer than a minute. Some guys forget about the tabs, and if you realize that, you go to pull it and it just pops right off. I think any glue that can set up within a minute is super good glue, and that's what you want. Time is money, and the better you can set it up, the faster you can go, the better, the more money you can make. Now, obviously, I'm saying, oh, yeah, I live in San Diego. I have the optimum temperatures. Yes, I understand that. So, yeah, but again, that's why we call it formulas. You really have to figure out with glue pulling the formulas of what's going to work and what doesn't. One time I was working in a very cold morning, and I had to glue pull this hood. I couldn't figure out why the glue wasn't sticking. I mean, I prepped it, I put it on there, I pulled it, it just comes right off like crazy. Well, that was before I really realized that there is actually a real formula on there. So I was there for an hour, and as I was trying to pull, the sun was coming over. Finally, it was starting to hit the hood. Instantly, that hood was starting to warm up another 10, 15 degrees because of the warmth of the sun. After the sun, after like going through 3 sticks of glue, trying, it warmed up. I went to pull it. I couldn't even get the tab off. That 10 to 15 degree temperature on the hood made a huge, huge difference. So be aware of that kind of aspect. Now, here's another thing too. When it's that cold, you almost got to do the opposite. You got to take a heat gun or a blowtorch, wherever you have with you, and warm up that panel. Not like as in hot, crazy warm, but like, again, warm to the touch, because it's going to cool down, and then put your tab on. You know, obviously after you prep it, but get it to at least good temperature, not cold and not hot, just kind of like nice 65 to 80 degrees, somewhere around there, if you can get it there, and you will find that you'll have much, much better results. Tapping down. Now, here's what my students have the biggest challenge on. Depending on how sharp your pull turns out, you want to choose your tap down carefully. I like to generally, if it's really aggressive pull, so my students aren't jabbing into the panel, I usually tell them to take an R4. It's a soft tip cherry cap with a cherry cap on top of it. You can get that from dentcrafttools.com. Check them out, Dentcraft Tools. You can also get Ultra's version of their soft tip from Ultra Dent Tools. But generally, I like to use the R4. It is firm, small, tap down, and it works great on very, very sharp highs, because you will end up getting a high. With fog and lines, they are 2 different reflections. I'm not going to get into all the, how you set this up, how you set that up. But with a line board, you're going to set it up really close, because if you set it too far away with your lines, it's going to get so detailed, so squiggly looking, that it's going to confuse the crap out of you, and your brain's not going to know how to comprehend it. So let's just say that right off the bat. With fog, it's not as aggressive. Fog will, it's a little bit more easier on your eyes, and it's not confusing the crap out of you. That doesn't mean one reflection is better than the others. I'm just telling you for certain techniques. Here's my take. I haven't really explained too much take. We're going to go off just a little bit to the left a little bit here. But as far as reflections, if you are a new technician and you're curious about lines, but everyone's telling you go fog, fog, fog. You know why they tell you to do fog, 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 right? Or, and if they talk any smack about which one's better and which one's not, yada, yada, remember this. It's not because one reflection is more better than the others. The real truth is that it's not about the reflection. It's about how well you understand it. So if you're willing to understand lines, then honestly, I personally think if you learn lines first, you'll be able to pick up fog way easier. I think you'll be able to learn. You have a better chance of learning 2 reflections instead of just 1. I think if you learn fog first, you will never want to try lines because lines is intense. Lines has a lot of detail. And of course, if you are that type of tech that just doesn't like to grow or get better at what they're doing, or has an opinion about that other stuff doesn't work without trying it, then good. All right, that's the way you want to roll. But be open-minded because the best techs are open-minded, and I hope you are one of those. So you'll have to do the tapping down. Let's get back to that. As you don't have to use the R4 the whole time. You can use another tab called a tip called the midpoint. It is like one of my favorite tips. And if you were talking about the base, like how do you screw it in? I'm going kind of like all over the place. So if you guys are kind of like brand new and I'm confusing you, or I'm going like I'm not making sense, then I really, really highly recommend checking out denttrainer.com. You'll get unconfused. You will get taught really quick and sped up on what's going on. As far as a midpoint, it kind of looks like a pencil tip, but not that sharp. It's kind of between a sharp tip and a blunt tip. So that is something to consider. That's my go-to tap down tip of choice. The bases, like what you screw it into, that is completely your choice of what you like. There are some really good ones out there. I'm not going to get into all the other ones, but you see me do reviews on them as well. Working on aluminum. Before, the myth was, back in the day, that you couldn't glue pull aluminum. It just was. And you know what? To that fact, it was kind of true because the tabs back then weren't as strong as they are today. So anybody who's coming into the glue pull era right now, you are lucky because number one, there's very good techniques. Some I'm mentioning right now. Some of them I might have mentioned you didn't know, and it might have helped you right off the bat. So you wondering why you're having such a hard time. But working with aluminum, it's here's the difference. Okay, compared to sheet metal, aluminum has nearly or little no memory at all. And what does that mean? So basically, it doesn't easily want to go back to its original shape. It has a hard time trying to push it. And glue pulling can be very challenging. That's if you don't understand the right technique with the right tools. So I'm going to give you some pointers. Since aluminum can be such a royal pain in the butt, it can cause you to be inaccurate when pulling. And I highly recommend using a water-based pen, like I mentioned before, just to make sure that you are putting it directly in the center. Okay. Applying the glue is also just a bit different. Aluminum demands a harder pull, and you should be a bit more generous compared to a smaller amount used for sheet metal. That is true. I like to go just a little bit bigger on the tab and a little bit more glue. Not like dripping glue. So I might have a rim left around the edge of the glue tab. So when I'm pulling. And for those guys who are already experienced, what tab would I use generally on an aluminum panel? I will minimum smallest size. I will go a 12 millimeter from gangrene to about 15 millimeter. I think 15 millimeter is probably a good tab to use on aluminum. And you generally, if it's my tool of choice or which apparatus I would use, compared a slide hammer over a mini lifter, I'm going to go mini lifter all day long on aluminum. Because I want to pin down the metal. I want that shock factor. I don't want to mess with the pit. I want to get it out. So that's just the way I go. Some guys like to tug and pull it and then tap down and tug. I like to go for the jugular and get it out. So I just want to fair warn you though, tapping down is more important than glue pulling, than pulling the dent. That's the easy part. Once you get that down, that's easy. Once you understand the formulas of when to pull, what type of glue you're using, and then the tabs, and then you understand your weather conditions, your environment. Tapping down is always going to be your challenge. If you don't tap that down right, you're going to be pulling again, and it could get super messy. So in that order, choose your tap down correctly. Choose the R4. Another thing about the R4, it doesn't slip, so you could be just a little bit off balance and still get a pretty good pull. A tap down. So that's kind of like how I do aluminum. Now here's another tip here. So let's say you were using the wrong tap down and you got a lot of little micro lows everywhere in the panel. Well, not everywhere, but in that specific area that you were tapping down. And you're like, great, I got a micro low here. I got still a pit here. I still got a little low. It's starting to look messy. So what you do is I generally take a crease tab and I try to cover up the area where I had a little bit of a mess. And then I will snap the crap out of it. And what it does is it pulls all those little micro lows, all those little texture that you created into one high, one skinny, nice, clean high. What's it do? It resets it for you. Basically, it takes all that, boom, and puts it up and pulls it up. Now you might have to do it once or twice between two different areas. Like maybe you didn't get the whole diameter of the area that you need to clean up. No problem. Just don't worry about that. You can clean up one area at a time and then repeat. So think about that. You get a little bit messy. Don't panic. Don't panic. Put a tab over it. Get a nice aggressive tab and pull it all up nice and skinny to a high. It will combine all that and clean it up into a nice clean high. And then you should be able to tap it down clean again. It's like if you were pushing and you pushed everything up and started it over clean from that aspect and then tapped it down. So hope that helps. All right. Here's another tech tip. I find that crease tabs work much better in most cases over a round tab. That's just my take. I've been sometimes especially on rails, maybe a dent close to an edge. You take a crease tab. If you take a round tab, just a little bit of that round tab hangs over, it's going to come off. It already lost 20%, 25% of its pull power. So use a crease tab, butt it up against the edge, along with it, horizontally with the edge where the dent's at. And you'll find that you'll have a much better pull over a round tab that will possibly hang over the edge. Now, since I've talked about this and mentioned this again, Black Plague has came out with the square diameter ones just for that reason. So you're not losing any coverage around or near an edge. Okay, let me talk about cold glue. You guys know I'm a firm believer, at least most of you. Cold glue, you heard me talk about it on the other podcast. I'm telling you, cold glue is essential. And I'm not talking the cold glue crap you guys are getting out there that's not the same. If your cold glue comes off most of the time on your first pull, that ain't cold glue. This cold glue that I have sticks like a regular hot glue tab. Not all the time, guys. Now, I'm not saying it stays on there when I slam it, but man, it stays on the panel. And the great thing about cold glue, the Cola Fria, is that it pulls the diameter of the dent. No, let me back up here. Cold glue is used for bigger damage, guys. That's what I use it for. And when I have bigger damage, I don't want to overpull any more damage than I have to. In other words, I want it to let go where it's necessary. If I used a super tab, like a Kiko super tab, and this isn't nothing against them. The only thing I would, if I had no choice, I'll tell you my other option after cold glue. But cold glue, when I put it on the panel, it shocks the metal and it lets go. It lets go just in time before it starts over pulling the metal and overstretching. Now with the Kiko Super Tabs, unfortunately, the good thing about it is they don't let go until you make it let go. And sometimes you controlling the slide hammer can be too aggressive, and you can over pull it and do more damage than you are anticipating doing. That's why I like cold glue. You see me use it on if you've been on dent training, you see me actually pull a dented corner bumper out with it. A dented corner bumper with cold glue. You see me do numerous ones on probably YouTube with the cold glue. So if you are serious about glue pulling at all, you're going to have the original cold glue kit. That's just hands down one of the best investments I ever bought. And thank you, Daniel Grom, because he forked out his money and I laughed at him. And I owe him an apology because that stuff works phenomenal. So now we're going to get on to Kiko Super Tabs. Kiko Super Tabs is a sensational glue tab. They just came out with their new Smooth series, which to me personally, you have to be experienced to use these. I wouldn't just put that on in any dent and start yanking away. You are going to most likely over pull it, and then you'll have a high spot along with the other dents around it that you didn't get out all the way. It is something to be used with. Generally, I think Super Tabs go very well with the K-bar that they have, the K-bar system, and it works fantastic. So you can control that. So you have your handle on one side, you have a foot on the other, and you have an apparatus going through the bar that connects to the Super Tab. And as you pull, you can see the dent coming up. Now, if you are using a slide hammer and you're just yanking away, you can't in an instant say, hey, stop. It's too late, right? Because the energy that you're pulling it just doesn't know when to stop. With the apparatus of the K-bar system, Kiko, you can control that to a certain point, and it pulls a lot, and it has a big, huge coverage area. Now, why would I use the Kiko Super Tabs over the cold glue? Well, maybe I got a big dent that I need to release some of the crown pressure off as I'm pulling. So there's been some cases where I'll have my tech pull a little bit, and then I'll tap down the crown as he's pulling. So it's kind of like a give and take technique right there. And so Super Tabs have a great place for that. If I was doing the Mazda Miata dent, so I'm getting back to that topic. If someone gave me that dent again, I had that dent again, I would definitely not pull it the way I did before. I would start from the outside and place those tabs from the outside, just right touching to the crown. I wouldn't place it too low below the crown, because what happens when you pull a dent with the Kiko Super Tabs below the crown, what happens, it ends up looks like gills. So you're not really taking what you want off the crown. You're actually creating another crown underneath the crown, because that's where the edge of the tab is pulling. So you really want that tab to be really close, if not on the crown itself, just in the middle of the crown or underneath the crown, just right there, to avoid those gills. And to finish my technique and what my theory is, not theory, but it's been proven, I've been using this for a while now, is I will take those tabs and gradually work from the outside and make that metal go back towards the deeper part of the dent. And that's what's called metal flow. You want the metal of that tab to help bring the meat in, because let's face it, if you took a smaller tip, like a soft tip, or even a big ball soft tip, there's two things going to happen. You're not going to get enough contact with what you are placing behind the panel, and you're creating micro highs. And every high that you create is going to be anywhere between 5 minutes to 15 minutes to fix. And if you create 30 to 40 to 50 of those, you'll probably be there for a couple days, like I was. And that's why you really want to work from the outside back, gather the metal back towards the inside. One more thing to how to picture this. So if we have a large dent about the size of, let's just say 20 inches, 2 feet. Okay. 2.5 feet. And it's in the rear quarter panel. And let's say I have a slow motion camera and someone backed into it. But you can see it slow motion, backs into it. You can see the metal crushing from the inside, from the middle. And it's taking the outside, and it's kind of like a black hole. It's just sucking everything inside the center of the dent. But you got this crown on the outside. The metal kind of flipped out, pushed out, but at the same time it went in and it stretched in. How do you get that dent out? Well, how do you do that? You want to know how to get dent out? You got to visually realize if you sped the camera back up, now played it forward, reverse the camera, play it backwards. Where does the tension have to come from for that dent to come back out? It has to come back where the last part was, right? Comes from outside, back to the crowns, down to the middle, back out. Just think about that. That's how I realized that when I was glue pulling and when I was doing bigger dents, that technique right there, just the visual part of thinking about that, helped me realize what I should be doing most of the time when I'm working those big dents. Now, there are exceptions. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, guys. It's just my way I do it. I like to do it, and I find it works, for the most part, successfully. It works really, really good. I think it'll help you too as well. I think it'll at least give you a different perspective, maybe slow down on how you're going to attack a dent. I think it's very important that you actually look at a dent as much as you can. I don't think it's very wise that you just jump into a big dent without really thinking about it. I like to schedule my dents, as I mentioned before with Don Kavanaugh, we were talking that. We like to schedule our dents a little bit further ahead. I don't like a walk-in customer with a big giant dent. I'm not mentally ready. I didn't get to study the dent. I didn't take a picture of it. I like to know what I'm going to be prepared for when it comes to stuff like that. So I hope that kind of technique helps. If you're looking for, sorry, I got off a little topic on that. If you're looking for glue sticks, again, go to AnsonPDR.com. They actually have like the brand of glues. Now, this is a little bit older here, and I don't think they've updated it yet, and we are going to get into the latest glues right here before we end our podcast here. So I'm getting a little bit long in here. So I'll briefly go over what these glue sticks were for as probably about 6 months ago, okay? And there has been some new ones which I'm going to mention. Okay, there are some. The brand is called Plain Jane PDR. It's called Gold Rush, and it's for high strength, hot and dry weather. The PDR glue systems, that's one. It's called the Red Chili, high strength, hot weather only. Another one called PDR glue systems again, the Yellow Jacket, that's hot weather only. The Orange Fire, hot, warm, and moderate. Now, remember, if you guys are like, what was that? Just repeat this, rewind it, okay? Extreme Purple, which is one of my favorites. Moderate to warm. Burrow PDR, that's the brand. Okay, and PDR, and Plain Jane PDR made this Extreme Purple and moderate to warm, so I love that stuff. The Burrow PDR, which is called the Black Widow, it is warm and humid. The Cactus Green by Burrow PDR, high strength. Okay, moderate to warm. Another good one. I like that one. And another favorite of mine is the Burrow PDR by their name is Bubble Gum Pink. Okay, Burrow. The pink glue, you'll see that in that pack. Works really good. Now I'm in San Diego, so that's no wonder it's moderate to warm. So that's what I live in, the climate I live in. This brand's been around for a while. It's called Dent Out, and high strength steel. Moderate to warm. The Anson Black, cool to warm. They've got a white brand, cool to warm. Tab Weld. Now, this is Keith Constantino's brand. This has been a go-to glue for a lot of people the last few years. And it is the color of it's gray. It's for high strength and is cool to warm. So it's kind of like an all-around glue. PDR glue systems, snowflake white, medium strength, cold to moderate. Plain Jane Swiss blue, and that is cold to moderate as well. And Dent out, and that's medium strength, and that is cold to moderate. And I think that's shoot, I wrote it in yellow and I can't read it. Oh, it's a yellow. So it's a yellow. So anyways, here's the deal on some latest ones. Okay, Glue Tracks by Anson. That one's super good. Okay, really good. And the big talk right now is the hog glue. It's an orange hog glue. It is great. So I tell you what, between the tab weld and the hog glue, it is pretty a neck race right there. You definitely have to get them both. I would definitely, if you're in cold weather and hot weather, I would get at least 4 different brands that I mentioned and then try it out. Or contact Anson PDR, contact Ultra. I think they sell a variety pack, and that is a smart thing to do, because you want to know what glues work best in your environment. So hope that helped. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, and here's another tool you could use. Now, you could use a flat bar too as well. You might have seen Sal from Dent Dial. He has a lot of different ways you could use a flat bar, much like a leverage bar or Kiko's K-bar system. It's kind of like in that aspect. So check that out, Dent Dial, Dent Expert. And also there's another company called Anaconda. They're a Russian company, and I think you can get that tool from Dent Tools USA out in Colorado. So check them out. Check that out. All right, I think I've got it all set, guys. I don't think I'm going to go in too much further right there. This is like a real quick take on glue pulling, what's going on today. Oh, man, hold on a second. What am I doing? I haven't talked about the tabs, right? You guys are like, wait a minute, you're forgetting one of the main things. All right, real quick. I'm not going to waste anybody's time, okay? I'm going to go real quick. Leica tabs, gangrene tabs, the Kiko tabs, the new flip tabs that they came out with, the I-Series tabs, the tequila tabs from Anson, the plain Jane tabs, there are some blem tabs, the crease ones that they make, freaking fantastic. Those tabs that I mentioned, that brand, fantastic. Okay, they pull exceptionally well. And my advice is, don't buy just one brand. Buy as many different brands as you can afford. The gangrene tabs, they're kind of expensive, but let me tell you something. They don't break unless you lose them. Okay, you lose them, then that's your thing. I highly recommend the 9mm, which I call the Glock. It's the smallest tab that they make. Then the 12mm is your real common tab. That's probably a tab that you're going to use most of the time. And then you've got the tequila tabs, which is Anson, super good. And the flip tabs from Kiko, because these are the latest ones I'm talking about right now. Because the flip tabs, what they have is that they have a smooth side on one side and a textured side on the other side. So maybe you don't want the aggressive pull, and you can use that. Or you want an aggressive tab, and you can use that side. So I find, and I think a lot of people agree, the smoother the tab, the harder the pull. We all used to think backwards that because it has, oh, check this pattern out. Oh, that pattern must be it. And everyone was trying to come up with the crazy pattern and you know, like how this has got to pull. It's the pattern. And then one year, Keith Constantino comes out with a smooth tab, flat, and it pulls the doors off of everything. Very, very good. Changed the way the tabs are. And they're strong and they don't break. I haven't broke one. Some people said they've broken them. I haven't broken one yet. I lose them. That ticks me off because that's like $3 or $4 a piece, but they don't break. They're not based on my experience. So that's my take, guys. I'm out of here, man. I don't like to go on and on. Let me know what you guys think. Give me some comments, please, down below if you are hearing it from YouTube. please go to iTunes, subscribe. Give me some feedback there. I don't care, good or bad. I'm a big boy. I've been in this game a long time. I'd like to hear your guys' feedback. Let me know what you'd like to hear. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about. Who would you like to hear from? Who could I bring on to help you guys out in the PDR world? All right, I'm out of here. Thanks for listening. I'll see you guys on the next episode.